Hello, my name's Peter Gore, and I'm going to talk to you in this video about language in the context of healthy aging. So before I do that, let's just go back to the framework that we use to measure how people are aging. It's only one thing that we can use, but it's a very useful framework. So these are the abilities that people lose in order down the left-hand side. So the first thing to do with healthy aging, if you like, is losing the ability to reach your toenails to cut them. And the last thing on this list down the left-hand side is being able to eat independently. We do these things every day, most of us, or every few days. And when you can't do them, you can't live independently. You'll be getting care from friends, family, professional caregivers, or you will be in an institution where you can do that. The early four pre-markers are just early loss of fitness. They're not necessarily specifically age-related decline. Obviously, it's not at a particular age, or maybe that isn't obvious to you, but it ranges over a 60-year period. So let's just remind ourselves what happens with trajectories and how this is following our subject of aging better. So here's Bert, upper Bert and lower Bert, two possible trajectories. Upper Bert essentially won't live longer because he's stayed higher for longer. He'll just be getting more better years, not more years, even if he does get a small difference on his life expectancy. So that's the background. How do you achieve better trajectories? Well, just to remind you, the first thing you do is you stay off the life curve for as long as possible by building up reserves so that if you have to go into hospital or something like that, you don't decline to a point where you start to lose ability. So build reserve. If you have lost ability, get it back. There's really good evidence that you can do that. Even people in nursing homes can get significant ability back. Thirdly, there's a role of equipment or technology in compensating so that people can still do something, but they're using some kind of technology or gadget or whatever to enable them to do it. And fourthly, but not less importantly, is the role of care. Premature care is not good, but obviously lots of people will need care as they get older. And that's an important part of, but that's people doing things for us, or ideally with us, rather than us doing them for ourselves. So at that point, we're losing that kind of ability at that particular stage. There aren't just 15 things that we need to do or choose to do as we live our daily lives. There's a whole range of things. And at each point, we can make a choice about, are we pushing back against the loss of ability or maintaining it through the use of technology, or are we accepting that we'll need care instead? These are the choices that we make. In the context of language, so much of what I hear people say about aging is just, at best, wildly out of date, if not just wrong. Life expectancy for over 100 years went up 5 hours a day. So what happened to our grandparents, great-grandparents, is very, very different to what might happen to people today. So let's talk about language in a little bit more detail. What happens as we get older? Well, is it genetic? Well, it turns out from twin studies that about 25% is genetic and about 75% is about the choices that we can and do make. So no, it's not simply something that's out of our control. But chronic conditions make a very big difference to how we age. Here's a list of chronic conditions. And the World Health Organization has said that 80% of these are preventable by the choices that we make. So it's really important to make good choices as much as we're able and willing to do, and that's going to shape the way we age. But I'm going to talk about other things that we can do, and particularly the language now. So when we use the word elderly, what comes to mind? What are you thinking about? What's the image you see? So is this an elderly person? Well, he's a bit of an outlier. But when we say, what do you expect at your age? Well, it probably isn't taking up marathon running at 85, which for who you think did. He lives in Edinburgh and he took it up by accident. Now, I accept that most of us are not going to be become marathon runners at 85. But that doesn't mean we can't do more aspirational things. It doesn't mean that we can't push ourselves if that's what we want to do. And certainly the language we're using doesn't fit necessarily the people that we're describing. And definitions are also important. So when we use words like exercise or activity, so all exercise is activity, but not all activity is exercise. Now, that doesn't mean activity is bad, a particular activity is bad, but different things, different definitions have different impacts on our body and how we age. So the terminology we use becomes really important. But there's also another even more profound thing potentially. So when we say things like, what do you expect at your age? If we have that negative stereotype of aging, so the Irish longitudinal study on aging looked at this and adjusted for all other factors in a decent cohort of older people and found that 2 years later, if you had a negative stereotype of aging, you'd be walking slower and more cognitively declined. That's adjusting for all other things. So we don't want to doom people to do that. So we need to try to be positive and encourage people to be positive, not unrealistically so, but at the very least, not unnecessarily negative. When we use words like frail, so you can see from this plot of frailty on the left-hand side, there is huge diversity, huge spread of people across these sort of 30, 40 years. Why do medics use the term frail? Because that describes the kinds of people that they're seeing. But of course, they aren't seeing healthy, independent living older people out in the community, because why would they go to see a medic? So if we're not careful, we get a skewed view of what the population looks like because of the people that come to us for our help. So I guess what I'm saying is, why not take people as you find them and not as you expect to find them? And then we can help people to live better for longer without undermining that with the kind of language that we use. And with that, I'll see you on the next video, and thank you for watching this.